When the English ships set sail for the New World in 1587, they carried not just supplies, but hope, dreams, and destiny itself. Yet what they left behind became one of the most chilling mysteries in human history. It began as a promise of a new beginning, the first permanent English colony on the soil of North America, a place called Roanoke Island, off the coast of what we now know as North Carolina. But within 3 years, the entire settlement disappeared. No bodies, no weapons, no signs of struggle. Only a single word carved into a tree. To this day, no one truly knows what happened to the 115 men, women, and children who called Roanoke home. The year was 1587. England, under Queen Elizabeth I, was hungry for empire. Across the ocean, Spain's colonies were thriving. Gold, sugar, power. England wanted its own foothold in the New World. Enter Sir Walter Raleigh, a charismatic explorer and court favorite. Granted permission by the Queen herself, Raleigh dreamed of founding a colony that would make England proud and rich. But Raleigh would never set foot on Roanoke himself. He sent others in his place, a group of settlers led by John White, a skilled artist and loyal Englishman. On May 8, 1587, their 3 ships, Lion, Roe, and Red Lion, set sail from Plymouth. Among the passengers, farmers, artisans, wives, and children. Not soldiers or prisoners, but families, the beating heart of England's colonial dream. White's own daughter, Eleanor Dare, was pregnant when she boarded. She carried within her the hope of 2 worlds, the old and the new. Weeks turned into months. The sea was cruel, but the colonists survived. At last, in July 1587, land appeared on the horizon, the barrier islands of the Carolina coast. They had reached Roanoke. Roanoke Island was breathtaking. Thick forests, fertile land, surrounded by shimmering marshes. But beauty can be deceptive. When John White and his people landed, they were greeted not by opportunity, but by silence. The remains of a previous English settlement, built 2 years earlier, lay in ruins. Abandoned huts, overgrown fences, tools rusting under vines. And the few native tribes nearby were cautious, even hostile. They remembered the English soldiers who had come before, men who brought disease and bloodshed. Still, White was determined. He ordered his settlers to rebuild, to fortify, to plant corn and wheat. But unease hung over the colony. Food was scarce. Relations with the local tribes, especially the CROATOANs and CROATOANs, were tense. And then, tragedy struck. One evening, a colonist named George Howe went crabbing near the beach. He never came back. The next morning, they found his body, shot with arrows, brutally beaten. He had been killed by a group of native warriors seeking revenge for an earlier English attack. Fear spread like wildfire. White knew the colony couldn't survive like this, not without supplies, not without allies. So he made a fateful decision. He would return to England to ask for help. Before he left, John White gathered the settlers. He told them he'd be back before long, bringing fresh food, tools, and reinforcements. He left behind his daughter Eleanor, his newborn granddaughter Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America, and 114 other souls. As his ship drifted away from Roanoke's shore, the colonists waved, and John White promised, "I shall return before the winter sets in." He didn't know it then, but he would never see them again. When White reached England in late 1587, his pleas for help were drowned out by cannon fire. Spain had launched the Armada, and England was consumed by war. Every ship was seized for battle. No one could spare vessels to rescue a tiny colony across the ocean. Months turned into years. By the time White finally returned to Roanoke, it was August 1590, 3 years after he'd left. As his ship approached the island, the settlers rushed to the deck. They strained their eyes, hoping to see smoke, lights, movement, anything. But what they saw instead was silence. White's boots crunched on the familiar sand as he stepped ashore. He called out for his family, "Eleanor, Virginia!" But the forest swallowed his voice. Every house, every fortification, gone. The settlement was dismantled, not destroyed, carefully taken apart. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Only one strange clue. Carved into a post was the word, and nearby, on a tree, just 3 letters, Crow. White's heart pounded. He had left clear instructions before he sailed. If the colonists ever moved, they were to carve the name of their destination somewhere visible. If they were in danger, they would carve a cross beside it. There was no cross. White took this as a sign that they had moved peacefully, perhaps to CROATOAN Island, now known as Hatteras Island, home of friendly natives. But a violent storm was rising. His crew refused to search. They were forced back to sea before they could investigate. John White never saw Roanoke again. The storm that forced John White away from Roanoke raged for 2 days and 2 nights. He stood on the deck, soaked to the bone, watching the faint outline of the island fade into darkness. Behind him, somewhere beyond the roar of the wind, were his daughter, his granddaughter, and more than 100 souls lost to time. When he reached England again, White was broken. He pleaded with Raleigh, begged for ships to go back. But Raleigh's fortune was crumbling. The Queen grew cold toward his colonial dreams. Roanoke was abandoned. Officially, England turned the page, but the whispers never stopped. Decades passed. By the early 1600s, English settlers began landing farther north in Jamestown, Virginia. It was there that the first rumors emerged. Native tribes spoke of people, pale-skinned, fair-haired, living far inland. They spoke a strange tongue. They wore European clothes. They called themselves by English names. Could it be the Roanoke colonists? Jamestown leaders took the report seriously. In 1607, Captain John Smith, yes, the same one who met Pocahontas, wrote about certain men clothed like the English, seen among the native tribes. But the mystery only deepened. Some said the colonists were killed by hostile tribes. Others believed they were taken in by friendly ones, perhaps the CROATONs themselves, and slowly absorbed into their culture. Still others whispered darker things, that something else had come for them. In later years, explorers searching the island found curious signs. Strange European tools buried deep in the earth, fragments of pottery, melted glass. In one location, archaeologists discovered a copper ring engraved with a cross, believed to be English, but later analysis showed it was of European origin, possibly traded by natives long after the disappearance. Each discovery offered a clue and another dead end. By the 1700s, the story of Roanoke had taken on a ghostly legend. Sailors swore they saw lights on the island at night, tiny campfires flickering along the dunes long after the colony was gone. Locals claimed to hear voices in the wind, calling out in Old English accents. For centuries, the tale lay buried in dusty archives and forgotten journals. But in the 19th century, as America's curiosity for its origins reignited, Roanoke returned to public fascination. Painters and poets turned it into myth, the lost paradise, the ghost colony. The name Virginia Dare became a symbol of innocence, of beginnings, of the price of ambition. Still, no one could explain what truly happened on that lonely island. Fast forward to the modern era. Archaeologists began returning to Roanoke with new tools, new technology, and old obsession. In 2012, a discovery shocked historians. While examining a centuries-old map drawn by John White himself, researchers at the British Museum noticed something odd. Beneath a patch of paper, a tiny repair, was a hidden symbol. A small red and blue four-pointed star drawn near the mouth of the Albemarle Sound, about 50 miles from Roanoke Island. White had covered it deliberately. Why? Some experts believe it marked the colonists' intended relocation site, perhaps a secret settlement known only to White and Raleigh. Others think it might have been a military base location, but no one could confirm it until the excavations began. Archaeologists nicknamed it Site X. When they began digging, they found traces of English pottery, weapons fragments, and tools dated to the late 1500s, the exact period of Roanoke. Yet the evidence was faint, scattered. Too few artifacts to prove a colony had survived, but too many to dismiss. Nearby, another site, Site Y, revealed similar finds. Two different groups, perhaps? Had the colonists split up to survive? For every question answered, two more emerged. One of the most compelling ideas is that the colonists assimilated into the CROATOAN tribe, living among them, intermarrying, and adapting to native life. This theory is supported by oral traditions among local tribes that speak of ancestors with gray eyes and European features. DNA testing on modern descendants has been inconclusive but intriguing, and linguists found old words from Elizabethan English that had somehow slipped into tribal dialects centuries later. Perhaps in some quiet corner of the Carolina woods, English blood still flows, unseen, unacknowledged, but alive. But not all theories are so peaceful. Some say the colonists met a far grimmer fate. In the years following the disappearance, sailors told tales of ghost lights drifting above the dunes, of figures moving silently through the fog. Some swore that bones were found buried in shallow graves, gnawed, broken, burned. Could starvation have driven them to desperation? Could disease or madness have torn them apart? A 17th century account from a Jamestown settler even suggested cannibalism. He claimed that the men of Roanoke were wasted with hunger and turned upon each other. Others pointed fingers at supernatural explanations, curses, sea spirits, even alien abduction in modern retellings. But beneath the fantasy lies one constant truth. They vanished, and no one came to save them. The word carved into that post, CROATOAN, would appear again and again in American folklore. When the writer Edgar Allan Poe disappeared for several days before his death in 1849, legend says the last word he whispered was CROATOAN. When the stagecoach bandit Black Bart vanished in 1883, the word CROATOAN was carved into the wall of his empty cell. It appeared again, scrawled on the bedpost of Amelia Earhart's cabin long after her own disappearance, though this one may be myth. Coincidence? Or is CROATOAN a symbol, a warning that once you vanish into the unknown, you never truly return? Today, Roanoke Island is quiet again. Tourists walk the paths where the colonists once built their homes. A replica fort stands beneath the pines. Birds sing where children once laughed. But sometimes, when the fog rolls in from the Atlantic and the marsh grass sways like whispers, it's said you can still hear faint echoes, hammer strikes, footsteps, a woman's cry. Some say it's just the wind. Others aren't so sure. Modern science continues to search for answers. Radar scans, DNA testing, underwater archaeology. But maybe the answer isn't buried in the ground. Maybe it's in the story itself. A story about hope, fear, and the cost of human ambition. They came seeking a new world and vanished into it. They dreamed of planting England across the ocean, but instead they became part of the land itself. Their fate remains hidden in the soil, in the trees, in the waves that still kiss the Carolina shore. And maybe that's the truest mystery of all, that some stories aren't meant to be solved, only remembered.